Hello friends, this is Malik, and today in this session we're going to talk about how to manage GitLab repositories with Terraform. In a start, we will focus on how to install a GitLab server. If you are new to GitLab installation on a local server, I would highly recommend to watch whole video from beginning. So in the first step, we are gonna install GitLab as a Docker container. And then we will manage Git repos on this GitLab by Terraform. We are going to use Linux as our base operating system for GitLab server. You can use any Linux distribution as you want, but here I'm going to use Ubuntu. My Ubuntu is ready. And as you see here, it's Ubuntu 20.04. Let's start. Just in case if you don't have Linux in your hand and you are using Windows machine, you can use Vagrant and VirtualBox to bring up a Linux machine. This is the choice that I'm using today also. So how to install local GitLab server by Docker container. On my Linux, I should have installed Docker. Let me check. As you see, the Docker is installed. If just in case if you don't have Docker installed on your machine, you can get instruction from the official website of Docker and install Docker on your machine. So for bring up a GitLab server as a Docker container, it is better going to official website of GitLab and have a look to instruction that was written there. Using Google and search GitLab Docker, going to Docker, image in GitLab server, all the instruction that you need to bring up a GitLab server on your Linux machine is here. So as you see here, this is the codes that you need to run on your machine to bring up that server. But I need to mention here, it is using Enterprise Edition, EE. It is better to change it at CE, Community Edition, to be more convenient for you to use that. Before using that instruction, it is better to create some folder on your machine. As you know, Docker has not persistent storage. So if your Docker machine stop or crash, all your configuration will gone. So it is better to create some folder on your Linux machine and mount them to the Docker. So if for any reason by accident your Docker machine is gone, your configuration will remaining and you can bring up again another Docker machine with the mounting the same storage that you created on your Linux machine. All the configuration will remain and you don't lose anything. I did a little change to this code. I added /data/GitLab here. So I'm gonna at first create them on my machine. As a root user, I'm gonna to make this folder, inside that GitLab. So need to add -p here to be created and enter. So I have created /data/GitLab. Copy this one. So you see here, it's going to pull it from the official website and then it will bring up that machine. It takes some minutes to download that and bring that up. So it seems Docker bring that up. Let me check. Yes. As you see, it is up but let me check the logs. Docker logs, docker log minus f, the ID of that Docker machine would be logs. Yeah, so let me correct this one. As you see in background, there is some process should be finished. Based on the how much memory you assign to this Linux machine, it take between 10 to 15 minutes. I pause video here for some seconds and after I will be back. Now I back. I gonna check the IP address of my Linux server by command IPA. As you see, we assigned it this IP before. We copy that IP, put in browser. This is the IP address of the machine, but if I hit enter, nothing happened. Why? As you see, we are outside. This is the Linux host and this is the container. We expose the port 80 from the GitLab to the outside by 8080. So if we want to access to the GitLab server, we should use the port 8080. So for access to GitLab, we should add 8080 at the end of that. By enter, yeah, this is the first page of the GitLab. For access to GitLab, we need a username and password to access that. If we back to the document of GitLab, as we see here, visit the GitLab URL, the same document. Username is root, and the password from the following command. So this is the command. You can connect to GitLab container, and from this address you can get the password, or directly by running this command you can get it. There is one important note: the password file will be automatically deleted in first reconfigure run after 24 hours. If during 24 hours you don't access to GitLab, this temporary password will be deleted. So let me back to the terminal and run this command. Or you can connect by this command and cd etc GitLab ls. You will see the initial root password. Exit from the container, copy the temporary password, go here, user root password, copy here and sign in. Yes, now we are inside the GitLab server. Maybe this question comes to your mind and think about it. Yes, if 24 hours passed and you didn't take care of that, so the password will be removed. So how you can connect that? So I mentioned in my instruction, need to connect to Docker container, and there is a command GitLab-rails console production, and will show you something like that, and need to run this command and assign a new password to your GitLab server. Okay, let's back to GitLab server. So the first step after we connect to GitLab server, we need to update the password, because the password is temporary and will be expired during 24 hours. So it's better going to edit profile, and here you will see the password. Just put the temporary password as a current one, select a new one. So relog in with the new password. Yes. As you see, there is an alert here. Anyone can register for an account. If I sign out, if you see here, register no. So everyone can click on that and register to GitLab server. So we should disable this one, and nobody can register and access to your GitLab server. So let's back again to GitLab server. So turn off that, sign up enable, so we remove that, and require admin approval for new sign in to that. So save change. In this step, we should create a new username and password for admins because we cannot provide them root username. For that reason, going here, administrator, in this section, user admin area, users, new user. For example, developer 1, username DevOps at sign. For the password, reset link will be generated and sent to user. User will be forced to set the password on first sign in. Automatically an email will send to this email, but normally we are using in lab and there is no email server that can send us an email. So let's create that and I will show you how to assign a password to this one. So in the access level, we can assign administrator and create user. So the developer 1 has been created. Back to users, as you see here, we can click on edit and assign a password. Let's sign out and use DevOps password. Here it will ask to change your password. Password successfully changed, DevOps. Okay, so everything is ready to create a project. So the section 1 is finished. Install local GitLab server by Docker container. In section 2, we need to create a repo manager manually on GitLab. What is repo manager? If we have a look to this picture, we need a repository that called repository manager. Why? Because we have Terraform config, we have Terraform codes. We need to keep them in a repository, and every time the developers want to use that can pull it from this repository and make change and then push to repository, and when push to repository, and developers can pull this code from the repository manager and do every change they want to build a new repository on GitLab server. For example, one of the developer pull the codes from this repository, make any change that he wants, and by running Terraform can create repository A or repository B or another repositories. As I need to say here, this is a simple way we are using. If we find the time, I will show you how to use GitLab CI/CD to automatically create repository. And when developer push the codes on GitLab repository manager, automatically will create each repo that we want. So let's back to GitLab server, create a project. Create a blank project. We called it repo manager. For visibility level, we can select public at the moment and create project. Pick up a group or namespace, DevOps. Okay, the project created, repo manager. There is an alert here. As you see, you cannot push or pull repositories using SSH until you add SSH key to your profile. So each developer, if we want to access to GitLab by pull or push based on SSH cannot do it. Cannot do it if there is an alert here. As you see, you cannot push or pull repositories using SSH until you add an SSH key to your profile. So every developer need to have a, so if the developers want to pull or push based on SSH, need to add their, they add their SSH keys here. So for the first step, let's clone this one based on HTTP. As you know, we cannot clone by SSH because we didn't add our SSH key here, so we are using HTTP. Clone HTTP back to terminal. So every developer in this network can pull repository. So here clone with HTTP and put it here. Git clone. Okay, because cannot resolve this one. We can add it to hosts, but let me change it to IP address. Repo manager. Let's do ls and you see only readme file. So the section 2 is finished. Now we need to go into section 3, write Terraform code to manage and create repositories. So let's open our code editor, VS Code, and start to create our Terraform code. So we create a new file and call it as a main.tf. Okay, let's search by Google for Terraform GitLab provider. Click on the first one, document for GitLab registry, and there is an example here. But every Terraform need a block that called Terraform. But as you see here, we don't find it here. Let's search, for example, for GitHub. As you see, there is a block called Terraform like this one. Let's copy this one and put in VS Code. Required provider, GitHub. So we need to use that for GitLab. So change it to GitLab, and we need a source to find the plugins, because when Terraform want to make API connection with GitLab, need to have some file installed that let Terraform communicate with GitLab. This source is for GitHub, but we are looking for GitLab. Let's back to documentation. For GitLab, as you see here in the overview here, it is written GitLab HQ/GitLab as a registry for download GitLab plugin. So let's use this one, back to VS Code and GitLab, and change this one to GitLab H. Control S. Let's test it if it is okay. Terraform. Okay, it seems this version not exists, so let's change it to 3. As you see here, finding the GitLab HQ GitLab version matching to this version, and the latest version is 3.18 signed by HashiCorp. The Terraform block is okay. The next block we should use that. Let's back to Google, going here. It's called provider. Now we can use this sample. We can copy this one and back to our code and paste here. Provider GitLab. What that means? So here is a section that we should define username, password, or token to communicate with GitLab. So we need to create a token in our GitLab server manually and put it here that allow Terraform to communicate with GitLab. And also we need to find the address of GitLab server, because by default it's going to connect to GitLab on internet, but we have a local Git server and we want to communicate to our local GitLab server. If you see this document, here is an optional base URL. This is the target GitLab base API endpoint. So by adding this one to our code, can define the address of our local GitLab. So let's add this one to our VS Code. Base URL. The address is as it was written in the document. It should be a string. So we put it in the quotation. Now we need to create a token in GitLab that auto communicate with it. So let's back to our GitLab. From here, edit profile, find access token, and create a personal token called Terraform token. So we can define until which date it will be expired. So we can add, for example, the end of December. We select API, grant complete read-write access to API, and just create. As you see, it has created here. This is a token. Make sure you save it. Only accessible once. So copy back to VS Code. It's not a good thing to make a hard code this token in the Terraform code, but at the moment we are using it as a lab. So we are hard coded here. So let's create another file as called var.tf as a variable and put it here. What was the name of the variable? This one, GitLab token. Use this one as a variable, this one. So type a string, default, this one. We put it as a default. And in description, so we save it back to main. So these two things are ready. Let's comment these lines at the moment. Just we wanted to be sure everything is okay. Again, we initial and let's Terraform plan and apply. So everything is okay. So let's add a project there. So here the section that let us create a project by Terraform on GitLab. So we called it as a demo01, name demo01. Let's back to documentation. So we need to check for visibility. The visibility is public or private. So I don't see something here. So let's Google it. GitLab visibility Terraform, and the first one in this is a GitLab project. Yeah, this item visibility level. Let's back to Terraform code and put visibility level as a public. Control S. Let's back to terminal. Yes, and let's apply. Yes. Yeah, it's created. Let's check on GitLab demo01 is created here. So the project is created by Terraform. If we don't like that, just we can destroy. Yes, done. And if, yeah, as you see here, it's easy. So from now, we can communicate with GitLab by Terraform and create or delete the project that we want. Section 3, it's almost done. So as you see here, now we can communicate with GitLab by Terraform. Okay, let's back to terminal and do the last steps. As we have created some Terraform files, we need to save them in repo manager in GitLab that can be accessible for other developers. As you see here, we have created var.tf main tf. When we did run Terraform, automatically it has created some files like Terraform tf state, Terraform tf state backup, and log HCL. So we should take care of them and save them in repo manager on GitLab that can be accessible for others. But as you see here, folder with the name of Terraform. So let's go there, cd.terraform ls. You see here provider. This one is the package of plugins that we have defined in block, that we have defined that we see providers. So let's provider ls registry Terraform IO. As you see in Terraform block, we have a source that I have already spoke about it. So the plugins will be downloaded in this folder .terraform providers. So we don't need to save it in GitLab repo because every developer when run it automatically will be downloaded on his computer. So let's exit from this folder and going to main folder. Only we need to take care of these files and no need to take care of that. Git status, git add main dot backup and var. Git status again. Now they are ready to be committed. Git commit message. Terraform update codes. They are committed. Git push. Username. Now I committed and push them to GitLab. So let's back to GitLab. Let's refresh. As you see, all the file recorded here. So it's the end of this tutorial. In this tutorial, we learn how to bring up a GitLab server by Docker container and then created a repo manager and also build a Terraform code how to communicate with GitLab and manage repositories. Thank you for watching this video and I will be happy put your feedback in comments. Thank you.